This book, our Constitution, protects our society and empowers us to govern. The Protea leaves are us, the people, who freely elect our voices in Parliament. The drum calls the people of Parliament, through whom we govern together. And the sun is our country, healing our past, improving our lives, and energizing our potential. Together, our Constitution, our people, our Parliament, and our country are building our great South African nation. Parliament TV, Channel 408 on DSTV. This book, our Constitution, protects our society and empowers us to govern. The Protea leaves are us, the people, who freely elect our voices in Parliament. The drum calls the people of Parliament, through whom we govern together. And the sun is our country, healing our past, improving our lives, and energizing our potential. Together, our Constitution, our people, our Parliament, and our country are building our great South African nation. Parliament TV, Channel 408 on DSTV.
Good evening and welcome to your Parliament, iParlamente lakho Parlamente ya hao. Libitso la ka ke Tshepo Mori, and I will be your host for this evening. This is a special broadcast brought to you by the Parliament of the Republic of South Africa, live from Parliament TV studio here in Cape Town, and of course on 30 community radio stations across the country. Now, the show is designed to educate our listeners and viewers and to keep you informed about all matters pertaining to Parliament, including the work of the parliamentary committees. Now, as the legislative arm of the state, Parliament has consistently strengthened oversight, enhanced public participation, and advanced lawmaking processes. Now, in tonight's show, we review the work of the 7th term of Parliament with a special focus on the work of the committees of the two houses of Parliament, the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces, since the formation of the Government of National Unity. Now, we are joined for the next hour by the House Chairperson responsible for committees and oversight in the National Assembly, Mr. Cedric Frolick, and his counterpart in the National Council of Provinces, Mr. Dennis Ryder, who will help us understand the work of committees in Parliament. And because this is your Parliament, your voice, your future, we invite you to participate in our conversation. Those who are watching us on YouTube, on our parliamentary TV channel 408 on DSTV, and those listening on all 30 community radio stations, please participate in this conversation by calling in to ask our guests some questions or even comment on the work of Parliament. And you can do so by calling us on WhatsApp on 073 444 9810. That is 073 444 9810. If you don't want to give us a call, you can leave us a WhatsApp text as well, or use our social media platforms, X and Facebook, at Parliament of RSA. Of course, we strive to attend to all of your questions and your comments. Mr. Ryder is the one who's joining us for a moment, and hopefully later on, Mr. Frolick will join us. Mr. Ryder, thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Tshepo. Thanks for having me on, and good evening to all of the viewers and the listeners out there as well. Thank you.
Of course, I told you that today we're doing things a little bit differently. It's not just the people that watch Parliament TV, but we have people that are listening in on over 30 community radio stations. So thank you so much for making the time.
No, it really is great to have an opportunity to talk to them and get our message across.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, let's start firstly by, can you please just briefly outline your key responsibilities as House Chairperson of Committees and Oversight in the House of the NCOP?
Thanks, Tshepo. Well, so there's quite a few little bits and responsibilities that go with it, and it is all given effect firstly in the Constitution, and then of course in the rules of the two houses. So House chairpersons are appointed in terms of the rules of the National Assembly as well as the rules of the NCOP. And there's also a thing called the Joint Rules of Parliament that gives us certain other responsibilities. Now, the thing that most people see us doing often is when we assist the Speaker or the chairperson of the NCOP by sitting up front in the chair and presiding over the House. That is obviously done because it is quite a stressful thing to do. It takes the energy out of one. So yeah, it's nice that we can have an opportunity to relieve each other in the chair and make sure that everyone is well rested and able to listen and focus throughout, because as you are sitting up there in the chair, you do need to focus intently on what's being said, what's being discussed at the time, and ensure that everything complies with, again, the Constitution and the rules of the House. So that's the thing that people see most of the time. There are obviously lots of other responsibilities, and as you've indicated, I have been tasked with looking after committees and oversight. So the committee work that we do really means coordinating the work of the different committees. Now, the National Council of Provinces has got 10 different committees, and we need to make sure that those committees are meeting frequently and are doing the work that they're mandated to do. We make sure that we balance all of those responsibilities and ensure that the members are appropriately represented and able to sit in those meetings. So we need to be very careful to balance the program and ensure that there's no overlaps, no conflicting issues that require a member to be in more than one place at once. So yeah, it's a busy job, and lots of balls in the air at the same time. Related to that as well, obviously there's the oversight component, and we need to really make sure that oversight is done effectively, that the budgets that we are given as Parliament are used in an efficient way to make sure that members of Parliament can fulfill their roles of going out there and making sure that the executive, where they are doing their work in the departments, that work is actually having a positive impact and influence on the people's lives out there, and that ultimately the government is serving the people as they are mandated to do.
And of course, now you've mentioned oversight and the importance of it. Then how does then your role as House Chairperson ensure that Parliament effectively performs its constitutional oversight and public participation mandates?
Well, that's a very deep question, and yeah, I think that the chairperson of committees needs to make sure that the agendas of the committees are are making sure that they can go out and get to the things that they are doing. So really it's a case of having an open discussion. Each committee obviously has a chairperson, and that is supported by committee staff. We need to make sure that the chairperson has the ability to get out there and that they've got a plan in terms of which they can do their work. Now, we don't dictate to them exactly what they do every hour of the day, but certainly it's a case of just making sure that the committees are doing the work that they are supposed to be doing. And of course it becomes quite interesting when you're splitting the work between the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. Now, Parliament has two houses. Lots of people say that. But why is the big question, and of course the two houses have distinct and different roles, and the Constitution has given us those roles, and so as the NCOP we need to ensure that we are furthering the interests of provinces when it comes to engaging with Parliament and the executive. So we don't have oversight over the work of provinces specifically. That oversight role falls to the provincial legislatures. But as the NCOP, we need to make sure that we are furthering the interests of the province, making sure as well that where provinces are finding difficult space, that we're able to communicate those difficulties that they're having to the appropriate member of the executive or, of course, through to Parliament. So our role certainly is to make sure that we remove all of the impediments that we can find that are blocking people. We need to empower the committee chairs to do their work and enable them to get out there and really make a difference in issues that matter. So keeping the work of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces separate, making sure we don't duplicate their roles. And there's often been a complaint of oversight stampede. So if you see a headline, you know, the National Assembly Committee will want to go there, then the NCOP committee goes there, then the Provincial Committee also wants to go in, and there's a bit of a stampede, which of course ends up being lots of people going, taking time, spending resources, talking about the problem, and then no one really taking ownership of it. So if we stick to our lanes, then we find that we can take responsibility, take accountability, and actually follow an issue through. And so that when we talk to our communities, when we get feedback from the communities, that somebody actually does something that is measurable and that actually has impact in the long run.
Now, Chair, of course, we have invited some of our guests to ask us some questions, and we have one on WhatsApp. And this one reads that they have a few burning issues, mainly public servants and non-delivery thereof, and a genuine and honest job creation for all and not a certain group. I hope this is seen as unfair. Of course, Chair, this is something that is very pertinent in our communities as well. The issue of job creation, is unemployment. What comment do you have with regards to that?
Well, of course, I think that job creation is one of the issues that lies at the heart of what this government is trying to do. And I think the Government of National Unity has come out quite strongly and said it's about the jobs and the economy. That's what we need to do.
And now we have Ruben on the line. Ruben, you're live on Parliament TV and across 30 community radio stations. What question would you like to ask the House Chairperson, Honourable Ryder?
Hi, good day. I've got a two-part question.
Okay.
And what I'd like to know, firstly, job creation within the entire country.
Yes.
It seems like it's just been limited to a certain age group, yet the 36 to 59-year-olds has been seen as the forgotten few at the moment. And those are the people that are actually suffering to feed their families and to try and create something for the family. So that is a massive issue that needs to be looked at and is often overlooked, because with every application you've got people with the qualification, but once they reach the age of 36, they don't qualify.
Okay, so that's the first part. The second part?
The second part is the non-delivery of service by the majority of public servants. May it be a councillor, may it be a police officer, may it be in the tussle with the grant. And should you complain? And this falls onto deaf ears, because people just don't come back to you. They admit that they received your emails or whatever it is you got, but that just gets ignored all the time.
All right,
so
Ruben.
if you could shed some light on that one as well, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you so much for calling in, Ruben. Thank you for that.
That's a pleasure.
House Chair, again, job creation, the issue of the age group with 36-year-olds not being included. How do we respond to that?
So I do think it is an important matter that needs addressing, and it's actually this morning on the Finance Committee, which I sit on, the Parliamentary Budget Office, which supports our finance people with their work, presented a number that there are over 280 job creation initiatives running in government at the moment. They also indicated that many of those are aimed at the youth, and exactly what Ruben is talking about is that there is a big focus on the youth, and which obviously often leads to people who are not considered to be youthful anymore. They may consider themselves youthful, but not in terms of the definition. But those people are left out in the cold, and it really is an issue. I think that the reality is that our youth unemployment rate sits upwards of 70%. And so it is really a massive, massive challenge. And of course, when you have people who are able-bodied, young and vibrant, and should be, at that part of their life where they are looking to gain skills, we really need to focus on getting jobs for those people so that we can create kind of a long-term view in terms of employment and outcomes for the country. But we should not be forgetting about those people that have struggled along so far.
course,
And I think
of
that
course.
the impact of COVID as well. There are many people that lost their jobs over COVID. Those people are now sitting, above the 25-year-old mark, because COVID was 5 years ago. Can you believe it that it started?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that including those people in programs is massively important. What one is seeing is that there are lots of initiatives that are being redirected, taking this into account. And I do know that certainly local government initiatives are directed at that. The municipality I come from certainly is very aware of this and has been punting the fact that we need to not only look after young people, certainly we do need to look after young people, but not only young people. And I think it all comes down to balance. And again, I guess it's also similar to oversight stampede, where you overreact to a specific problem because it's in the media, it's being highlighted all the time, 70% unemployment in the youth. So let's address that. Don't forget about the rest. It's a massively important issue, and I think that it really is something that needs to be addressed. In terms of the lack of service delivery from the people that do have jobs, I think that that's certainly where Parliament's role comes into play.
Of course.
And I think that we as members of Parliament need to ensure that we take concerns like this and we go and see for ourselves. Now, that's the role of oversight. Go and see for yourself. Now, I mean, the Queen of England is famous for saying once that she thought that the whole world smelled like paint. And the reason for that is because wherever the Queen's going, people put on a fresh coat of paint, you see. So she thought that the whole world smelled like paint. Because people tend to spruce things up just before you get there to do your visit or your oversight. And so I think that makes it all the more important for us as members of Parliament to do unannounced oversight from time to time and ensure that we go out and see for ourselves. There are 456 members of Parliament, 400 in the National Assembly, 56 in the National Council of Provinces. And it's important that, I beg your pardon, 54. I always get the number wrong. 54 in the National Council of Provinces. But the 454 of us can't be in every single Home Affairs office every day or every police station every day. So that's when we rely on members of the public to also speak to us. And I think that if you do go on Parliament's website, if you go onto the PMG website as well, pmg.org.za, you will find contact details for your public representatives, and you can always send us a message, let us know what frustrations you're experiencing out there. I think we're aware of many of them, and the reality is that unfortunately the public service has gotten into a bad habit perhaps of not being happy at work, not feeling driven at work all the time. Now there's many reasons for that. Some of these places have become toxic workspaces, and it's a big challenge for ministers certainly to reinvigorate their departments. We're seeing that happen in certain cases now, but to improve and make sure that our staff members feel valued as well, because those are the people that are at the face of government delivery. So I think that making sure that those people that are employed, that do have jobs within government, we need to make sure that those people are given the tools that they need to do their jobs. That comes back to other problems like having computer systems that stay online, that don't go. I mean, the famous one is, the system's down.
The system is offline. Yes, of course.
So, that creates frustration for our staff members as well. And it's just an environment that's not conducive to having a happy working place. Because if you're working in a place and some people are yelling at you, the people that you're servicing every day are yelling at you all the time, it's not a nice place to work, and you wake up in the morning feeling negative. So getting all of these bits together, to pull together to make sure that people can do the job that they're supposed to depoliticize the working environment as well, so that it's not such a toxic environment, and that we can take these things forward and make sure that the people are getting the best possible service that they can. Of course, a switch to better technology is really going to be an important part of this, because we've seen with all institutions, all private institutions that deal with vast numbers of people, and I think here of the banks certainly, the banks have taken as much of their transacting online as they possibly can, reducing the need to interface with human beings.
Yeah.
Now, you can't do that with the police services, obviously, and certainly not the health services
Of course.
either. But, of course, things like Home Affairs, it is somewhere where you can digitize your systems,
Yes, yes.
make sure that people have to spend less time standing in queues, and those initiatives, I think, are things that we should be applauding.
And I mean, House Chair Ruben mentioned that sometimes the issue is that you go to a councillor and you address a certain issue with them, and then they still do not attend to that. Maybe we can answer that after we've received this caller. We have another caller. Caller, you are on Parliament TV. Hi there. Do you have a question for House Chairperson?
Yes, I have a question. Good day to everyone is paying attention today. My name is Ronald Mkwebu, and the question is, in regard to civilian oversight committees to oversee budgets, to increase accountability and decrease looting, how can we ensure that we set up committees in the 2025 to 2026 financial year?
Alrighty. So basically your question is basically on oversight committees and ensuring that there is better accountability and better oversight.
To be specific, civilian oversight
Civilian
committees.
oversight.
So
Thank you.
people plucked from our community specifically.
Perfect. Thank you so much for calling in. I'll
Thank
share
you.
another one. Civilian oversight committees. How do we ensure that those are able to ensure that their mandate is in place and ensure that oversight is performed and all these functions that are to ensure that there is proper service delivery?
I'm not sure I entirely understand the question, but let me have a go at it and you can correct me if I'm not
Please.
getting there. So look, civilian oversight really happens, and it's most common that civilian oversight over the police
Yes.
happens, and that's obviously facilitated through the provinces. But I think that civil society has a massive role to play with every single committee.
Yes.
And every single committee goes through a process of public participation as we are interrogating the budget, as we're interrogating different bills, and as we are looking at the issues that are facing that particular department.
Yep.
What we find is that so often the civil society is slow to respond in terms of coming to our meetings, and we find that we get the same groups of people that come to our public participation efforts over and over again. Now, I do understand that often these things are poorly advertised. I do also understand often these things happen during working hours and making it difficult for people to participate.
Of course.
So what we are busy with now, and Mr. Frolik will I'm sure elaborate on it a little bit later when he gets here, is looking at different ways of ensuring that civil society can engage with Parliament, because it's an important voice. Like I said just now, we need those voices to come out to let us know, where the problems are. We can't be in every single police station every day. So there is an initiative to start looking at setting up things like having public participation via Zoom. Getting away from the situation where public participation is something that happens at the same venue every time we go out. It becomes easy to fall into that trap, because once you know of a venue and once you have advertised to certain people, it's so much easier next time you have to do public participation to go back to the same venue and speak to the same people. It's something that we need to get away from, because there are over 60 million people living in this country, and they should all have a voice. This is the People's Parliament.
Of course.
So diversifying our venues, making sure we go to different places all the time, making sure that if it's the Portfolio Committee of the National Assembly, that they go to one venue, and the Select Committee of the National Council of Provinces goes to a different venue in a different town, and then we can get a much broader set of voices coming towards us. But really, I want to encourage members of the public as well as civil society. When you see adverts for public participation, it always happens with the budget, particularly, that's the one I know best, because that's the committee I sit on. But whenever there's opportunity for public participation, go along. You might be a little bit shy on your first visit to stand up and grab the microphone. It can be intimidating, but go along, get the feel for it, and next time there's another one, absolutely grab the microphone and have your say. Make sure that your voice is heard. But don't limit yourself to that. Send us a letter.
Yes.
Put together a petition. Talk to your MPs.
And of course, that is in line with this is your parliament, your voice, your future. And this is just a reminder that this is a special broadcast brought to you by Parliament of RSA on Parliament TV channel 408 on DSTV and on over 30 community radio stations. Now, please remember to join the conversation by calling in to ask our guests some questions or even comment on the work of Parliament. And you can do so by calling us on WhatsApp on 073 444 9810. That is 073 444 9810. You can leave a WhatsApp text or you can use our social media platforms at Parliament of RSA. We'll strive to attend to all questions. Now, House Chair, of course, then with the work that you do, it comes with strengthening parliamentary oversight, and we've been talking about that immensely. Can you then just explain on how your office then ensures that this mandate is effectively carried out, especially the NCOP, because it's so close to the work of the provinces?
So it becomes very difficult because there's limited hours in the day, and as I've said just now, there's lots of people living in South Africa, and of course getting around all 9 provinces becomes quite difficult. So the fact is that we need to choose which issues are possibly the biggest ones that we need to deal with, which issues have the most impact or impact the most people, and where we're likely to be able to make a difference. So again, it's a big balancing act, and that's part of the role of my office, is to determine whether the programs of the committees are going to have the maximum impact that we hope that they can have, and try and ensure that kind of wasteful visits, things that are not going to have an outcome, are minimized. Now, you can't always predict what the outcome of a visit will be, but you get a pretty good sense where there's a real urgent burning problem. You get a good sense of what's going to have impact. So really it's a case of sitting and scrutinizing plans and trying to make sure that the plans are well researched. And again, this is an important aspect of our job, is that we need to have evidence-based decision making. So famously, the people that complain the loudest are normally the ones that have people going and running to look at their issues, or the people that are politically connected, tend to draw the focus of members of parliament. Trying to get away from that and focus on what's the real issue underlying. Is this a real deep, far-reaching issue or not? And again, does the issue require the NCOP or the National Assembly to place a focus on it? And that is something that we're really starting to do well. And Mr. Froelich and I have been cooperating extremely well in terms of making sure that we ensure that our different responsibilities are protected, and that we pass things on to each other where it's appropriate for us to do so.
And in that then, Chair, you spoke about the fact that there aren't enough hours in a day, right? Now, when we talk about how Parliament has now structured things, and we've got calendars, and you've dedicated specific weeks to oversight, constituency week, provincial week even, and plenary sittings, how has this then improved the effectiveness of your oversight work?
Good. So that's a great question. So the National Council of Provinces does an oversight once a year. It's called Taking Parliament to the People, where we literally decamp as the entire NCOP, and we go and we interact with a specific province. And the outcomes of that have been excellent. The last one that we did was to KwaZulu-Natal, and there were some real positive benefits that came out of that, including looking at the sugar industry and the impact that some of the laws have on the sugar industry and the small-scale producers that have really been suffering under the impact of some of the laws. Again, trying to find balance between the health issues on the one hand and the lives and livelihoods of the people in the industry on the other hand. We also do Provincial Week, where we split up into our different provinces. All of us go to our provinces and have specific oversight. There's normally an intensive program that we sit on with that, and we go and see specific issues there in the provinces. That also happens once a year. And then we have Oversight Week in the NCOP, where you go and look at specific issues for your committee. And again, we go away as the individual committees there. So lots of focus, lots of getting out and going and seeing exactly what's happening on the ground. See for yourself.
And then with that, then, of course, there are findings that you have on oversight visits. There are findings during Provincial Week throughout the different provinces. How does then the NCOP ensure that these findings translate into actionable recommendations and real change within government departments and entities is felt by the South African people?
So, yes, another good question and an important insight. So historically what's happened is that there's been an input, so we've had issues being raised. Here's something for you to go and see. We've gone out and oversight, we've had a look and seen for ourselves. We come back, we write a report, and there's a long report that goes out, and sometimes the matter dies there. Now, it doesn't happen always. Sometimes there's good actions that come out of there. The draft strategic document of the 7th Parliament adds a different 2 layers, or an additional 2 layers to this process. And it's something I'm quite excited about. And the first one is outcomes. So in other words, it mustn't just be an output, which is a report. There must be outcomes that follow from that. Now, if that outcome is writing a letter to the provincial committee that's responsible for that, then that's an outcome that needs to happen. And then we need to get them back to Parliament and say, committee, what have you found? What are the issues and how can we help you resolve those? And then, of course, the top step is impact, because writing a report seldom has dramatic impact. It doesn't change the lives of South Africans. But if we do have an output, a specific output, be it that, as I said, a letter to a committee, be it a proposal for a slight change in a law or a regulation, or be it a letter to a department saying, department, you're failing in this space, let's give you a little bit more focus over here and report back to us. Then there must be, at the end,
an impact.
Actual impact on the people living in South Africa.
And of course, this is a reminder that this is a special broadcast brought to you by Parliament of RSA on Parliament TV, channel 408 on DSTV, and over 30 community radio stations. Join the conversation, call us and ask questions and comment on the work of Parliament. And you can do so on 073 444 9810 or on our social media platforms go X le Facebook o bolella hore na o nahanang ka mosebetsi wa Parliament. Of course, we strive to attend to all the questions. The conversation continues with the House Chairpersons of the 2 Houses of Parliament, the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. That is Mr. Dennis Ryder, who has been here with us in studio, and we will be joined shortly by Mr. Cedric Frolic. Thank you. Keep on watching.
This book, our Constitution, protects our society and empowers us to govern. The Protea leaves are us, the people, who freely elect our voices in Parliament. The drum calls the people of Parliament, through whom we govern together. And the sun is our country, healing our past, improving our lives, and energizing our potential. Together, our Constitution, our people, our Parliament, and our country are building our great South African nation. Parliament TV, channel 408 on DSTV.
South Africa's Parliament will proudly host the 11th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit, known as the P20, bringing together leaders from G20 national parliaments to shape global policies and reinforce parliamentary oversight in international decision-making. As the first African country to lead the P20, South Africa's Parliament is championing Africa's active participation in global governance and economic policymaking, ensuring the continent is a driving force in shaping the future we want. Parliament will play a critical oversight role, ensuring that South Africa's commitments as G20 president translate into real economic growth, job creation, and social development. The P20 summit will embed African perspectives in global decision-making, ensuring that policies on trade, technology, and governance reflect the continent's needs and aspirations. In alignment with SONA 2025's theme, Harnessing Parliamentary Diplomacy for the Realization of Global Solidarity, Equality, and Sustainability, Parliament is committed to fostering international collaboration for a better, more just world. Your Parliament, your voice, your future.
And this is a special broadcast brought to you by Parliament of RSA on Parliament TV, channel 408 on DSTV, and over 30 community radio stations. I want to thank everybody that has been part of the conversation and that has been calling and sending SMS, WhatsApp texts for our guests. And some of them have been questions and some have been comments on the work of Parliament. And you can also join the conversation by calling us on WhatsApp on 073 444 9810. That is 073 444 9810, or leave us a WhatsApp text instead, where you can have questions for the house chairs that we have in studio today, because they are here for you. Now we are joined by Honorable Cedric Frolick. Thank you so much for making the time, Chair.
You're welcome.
And of course, we start immediately, Chair. We have a question for you that was written for you on WhatsApp, and we're just wondering if you could just get into that and interact with the question. This lady does say that the participant does say that they are deaf and would like to participate in the conversation that we're having today.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
So ek sal begin om die vraag te lees.
Yes.
Dit gaan oor die Suid-Afrikaanse grondwet. Ek wil my kommer uitspreek oor die gebrek aan 'n maksimum ouderdomsperk vir die president van Suid-Afrika. Terwyl gewone werkers teen 60 of 65 moet aftree, kan politieke leiers aanhou dien selfs op hoë ouderdomme. Dit skep ongelykheid en ek stel voor dat 'n ouderdomsperk vir presidente oorweeg word om billikheid en doeltreffende leierskap te verseker, en dit kom met vriendelike groete vanaf Annette. Die respons op die vraag is baie duidelik. In terme van die grondwet en die grondwetlike bepalings is daar geen ouderdomsperk op enige persoon om verkies te word as 'n lid van die parlement of 'n lid van die uitvoerende gesag of selfs die president ook nie. Dit hang af van die verskillende politieke partye. Wie hulle kies as hulle leiers, en dan kom die parlementariërs bymekaar en hulle kies vanuit hulle eie geleedere dan die president van die land. Ons moet ook daarteen waak om die waarde van ouer mense te onderskat. Want dit gaan met baie wysheid gepaard, daar's baie ervaring ook. Maar wat natuurlik belangrik is dat daar 'n goeie balans moet daar word, sodat die parlement, die lede van die parlement, die lede van die uitvoerende gesag 'n verteenwoordigende groep mense is van die bewoners en inwoners van Suid-Afrika, sodat almal in die land iets het waarmee hulle kan identifiseer. En ek dink die mense wat in die ouderdomsgroep is, waarna verwys word, het verskriklik baie wysheid en ervaring wat hulle kan deel, ook met die jonger geslag.
And of course, it's an important thing that you mentioned, because people have been complaining about the age group of members within Parliament. And you draw a very important point when you say that there has to be a balance, because one, you cannot overlook the fact that the wisdom that the old parliamentarians have needs to be sanctioned, and we need to take that from them. Of course, while we are ensuring that the young parliamentarians are learning and that they will take leadership should the older generation decide to retire. That is a great point there. Thank you so much, Honourable Cedric Frolick. Now, one of the questions that we've been talking about with an Honourable Rider is the work that you do within the National Assembly. And we just briefly give us an overview of how important it is and what role and responsibility you play within the National Assembly.
The role of the House Chairperson for committees, public participation, oversight, and sectoral parliaments. The bulk of the time goes into coordinating the work of the different portfolio committees and the chairpersons, firstly to ensure that they act within the Constitution, secondly that they do their work within the parliamentary framework and the timelines that are laid out, and they must adhere to the rules of the National Assembly, so that we don't find a situation where the National Assembly encroach on the responsibilities of the National Council of Provinces. We also need to ensure that the core constitutional mandate that are given to the portfolio and select committees in the National Assembly specifically
Yes.
is adhered to and that they execute it, especially in terms of the oversight role that they must play over the executive.
Yeah.
Also the lawmaking process that must take place, and to represent the people of the country. Members of Parliament are not directly elected. They are indirectly elected from parliamentary lists that are provided
Yes, yes.
by the political parties, and based on the support, the members are then drawn from these different lists. But that doesn't diminish the importance of the role that they must play as members of Parliament.
And talking about the importance of people, I'm so sorry, Honourable Ferrick, we have Sine who's on the line, and they would like to ask a question. Welcome, you're live on Parliament TV and on 30 community radio stations. What question do you have for us today?
Good evening or good afternoon. I'm listening through Alfredo Contrarido in the East Cape. Regarding the money that is being sent back in particular departments that didn't use the money, what are the measures that are taken in making sure that that doesn't happen? And is there any way of the community for them to intervene in such situations?
Alrighty, thank you so much for this call, Sine. Honourable Chairs, what do we do? I mean, the last time it was NSFAS where money was taken back, and a lot of people felt that so many students need aid, financial aid. What is the role of Parliament then in ensuring that state departments do not send back money, especially when this is a delivery or a service that people need so much? Honourable Ryder?
So, in my space, we see it more often with provinces and municipalities that are not spending the money that's been allocated to them in time. Now, it is important that money of the state is protected, because ultimately the state doesn't have money. We use taxpayers' money to achieve certain things. And there must be accountability for that. So if a municipality, a province or department is not able to spend their money on what it was laid down for whatever reason, and I think we also need to understand that occasionally there are delays in projects, often caused by the famous construction mafia, or through other circumstances. And I mean, it's not always nefarious circumstances that bring these delays about. Sometimes you are busy on a construction site and you hit a big chunk of rock that you need to move out of the way first. And I'm talking from first-hand experience on that from way back when I was an MMC. But so the reality is that if money is not able to be spent on time on the right thing, it should never be then taken and used for fiscal dumping. In other words, well, we've been given this money by the national government, let's buy this thing quickly, or let's do that quickly, let's misuse these funds in some way. That should be prevented. So not always returning money is a bad thing. Normally it shows good controls. But it is important for us as Parliament to get to understand what the reasons are when provinces, municipalities and departments don't spend their money. What is the underlying reason? Is it incompetence? Is it people don't care when the places that they've been allocated to? In those instances, absolutely Parliament needs to follow up. If it is something that is, example, a procurement problem or something that has happened to derail the project, certainly I think that there should be consideration for rollovers of those funds, and Treasury is very accommodating of that. So normally by the time it gets to a point where money is being returned to Treasury, there's normally an underlying problem, and it's a good sign. Always go and do your oversight there, and when you scratch, you'll probably find something that looks a little bit nasty.
And Honourable Freilich, of course, as in your position as the House Chair in the National Assembly, do you then ensure that committees are doing that proper oversight over these departments and get to the bottom of why is money being sent back to the state?
I want to take you back about 24 months ago when we experienced floods and climate-induced disasters in 7 of the 9 provinces in South Africa. And there was funding, emergency funding, made available. And the different municipalities and provinces had to access the funding following a particular prescribed legislative approach with its regulations. And then we found out where the red tape is also in the system. So we need to look at how do we ease that up. But accountability is very important because you can't use the taxpayers' money for something that it is not intended for. So what we discovered was that at the municipal level, local government level, as well as in provinces, there is a severe lack of skills in a lot of instances to comply with the prescripts that are there. And they just give up. Sometimes they say, no, this is too difficult. We are not going to pursue it any further. We were, for instance, in Paris in the Free State. And we said, look at the conditions. Did you apply for the grants? Yes, we applied, but then we just gave up. It got too difficult. Now, there could be underlying political reasons as well. And that is why we need to upskill the public service continuously. I believe in our country we have young, bright minds who must enter the public service so that we can address the skill shortage. And I believe our young people are committed to building a strong South Africa, and they will work tirelessly to ensure that the conditions of our people are improved instead of returning budgets for whatever reasons that are there.
Now, House Chair Dumisang says that the Cabinet approved the proposed budget by Finance Minister that was tabled last week. Honourable Frolic?
Well, the Cabinet did not approve the budget because it's not for the Cabinet to approve the budget. Parliament must process the budget. So the Minister tabled the budget on behalf of Cabinet, and as we could understand, there are certain political parties that's part of the Government of National Unity that didn't agree with all the proposals. But the budget instruments are now in Parliament, and it's for Parliament to process it according to the Money Bills and Related Matters Act. So there's intense discussions taking place now between political parties to say, what are you not agreeing with? Are you agreeing with the spending priorities? But you're not agreeing to where the money must be resourced from. So that's where the discussions are taking place. So on the 2nd of April, the National Assembly, I think the NCOP will do it on the same day, is they will consider the fiscal framework and the revenue proposals. And then we'll see which way we are going. If there is general agreement and it gets enough support, then it will go into the second phase. And that phase is where the different portfolio committees will get involved and where policy debates and discussions will take place. And then early in June, that is where the vote on the final budget proposals will take place. So the proposals are there from Cabinet, and it's now up to the elected representatives to process what has been presented.
So Dumisang, the short answer is keep watching Parliament TV. Processes are going to go underway, and you can be part of that. Now, Honourable Ryder, Kwali here from North Coast Radio in Richards Bay says that they would like to know, how do we advertise if Parliament is coming to your area for public participation? And how do you make sure that everyone is included, especially the disabled community?
Well, firstly, I want to thank Kolile for listening to us, because that was a question emanating out of what we discussed earlier. So I think it is it's something that's normally advertised in newspapers, advertised on community radio stations as well, and we do go some lengths to ensuring that there is good communication going out into an area when there is due to be oversight or a visit or public participation in an area. I do think that there is scope for us to improve dramatically, and I think that the first thing that I mentioned was newspapers, and I mean, there's not many people that buy a newspaper anymore. I'm not sure when you last bought one. I still like reading the newspaper, but that's probably why I've got grey hair. But yeah, so I think that we're always looking for new ways of communicating with the broader public. Through that we consult with provincial government and also local government, and usually you'll find the Speaker's office will advertise on our behalf as well, and the fact is that interest groups as well are specifically targeted generally by the particular committee that's going out. So they will communicate with interest groups, with civil society that they know have an interest in a particular topic, and they will engage them. But I do think we can do better with our communication, and that is something that Mr. Frolic and I are both working on.
Now, please, you can add.
No, I think the Honourable Ryder has covered it, but I want to mention specifically where the thrust of the new approach is. Part of my responsibilities is public participation and sectoral engagements. And in terms of the draft strategic plan, we are very clear that we are moving away from the printed media and the over-reliance on the printed media only.
Yeah.
It's a youthful population. We must use the different social media platforms and new technology to get the message out. But as far as the sectors are concerned, because the disability sector is a key sector for us, it's also to have a database to ensure that if they miss it on social media or on community radio stations, that at least there is communication that go out to the sectors that we are aware of. To say this is the piece of legislation or this is the issue that we are currently considering, please comment. And so that when you're on our database, you will automatically receive the information as it comes through. Then you can come and do a verbal presentation on what it is that you want to be considered, or it can be done in writing. But we are looking forward in the 7th Parliament really of pushing very strong a more digital, more community radio station approach. We call community radio stations cover areas where there's even no newspapers, no print newspapers available.
Of course. So clearly then the 7th Parliament is looking at digitizing and finding innovative ways to ensure that you reach the people of South Africa. Now with that then, House Chairs, can you then just explain then how are there then any mechanisms in place to ensure that the laws that are passed within the two houses, that they are effectively implemented and monitored after they're passed? Because there was an issue where people say that there's an issue with impact assessment, that there isn't proper impact assessment for when a bill has passed and it has become an act. Are there any mechanisms that are being used, Honourable Arada?
So, again, I'm going to refer you back to the draft parliamentary strategic document, which is due to be adopted within the next couple of weeks, by the way. But that again calls for a fresh parliamentary impact review on legislation that has been passed. So I think we all remember that Mr. Kgalema Motlanthe, ex-president of South Africa, undertook a high-level panel review where they looked at the legislative impact, specifically focusing on key areas in order to bring about transformation, speeding up transformation. And that review made some excellent recommendations, one of which has led Parliament to begin a process now as well, that we need to do that. Now there's currently a pilot project that is happening in committees. Mr. Frolik will agree, he's got a couple of his committees that are doing a pilot project on the legislative impact review, and I have a couple of committees doing the same in the NCOP. And once that pilot is complete, we'll know exactly how well this works. We've actually done an interesting exercise in the NCOP recently in my office, and we've gone back and had a look at all of the laws that have been passed since 1997, since the NCOP was established in the Constitution, and having a look at all of those. It's surprising to see how many acts have been passed in those few years, relatively few years, and finding out which ones we really need to pin down, have a look at, and take a good close look at and see, are they having the impact that the people that crafted those laws intended in the first place.
And Honourable Frolik, then following on that, then what are some of the specific things that the legislative impact assessment then will be looking at?
Well, when you pass a law, there's an intent as to what you want to achieve. So we, in terms of the review process, will look at also the allocations, the budgetary allocations, whether it is sufficient, whether the policy changes emanating from the legislation, does it really have the intended outcome? I want to use, for example, the Marine Living Resources Act that was put in place so that local communities along the coast could benefit from their livelihoods out of the sea. But what we have seen is completely the opposite, and the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment that is overseeing the implementation of that act will give us the necessary information, and the committees will go out also to do an impact assessment, because currently community fishing communities has been decimated, which is completely the opposite of what was expected, while the big companies, they are benefiting out of the resources. And in certain instances, you do find that people who historically have lived along the coast, made a livelihood out of the sea, are then being turned or termed or labeled as poachers. And it is one of those outcomes that Parliament definitely need to assess and to see how it can be corrected. and if there's any legislative amendments that is required to ensure that the intended outcomes is achieved.
And of course, then, when we look at, I think a lot of people have said that there's a shift between the 6th Parliament and the 7th Parliament. With the 7th Parliament, it's more implementation, more action, and also ensuring that bills that have been tabled and that have been enacted now, that there's something, it's impacting the very South Africans that have voted you as their representatives within Parliament. Now, with that, then, what can the public expect to see at the 5th year of the 7th administration, when everything is all and done and Parliament rises for the last time in the 7th administration? What can they expect to see? What can they expect to feel, not only just in their communities, but in South Africa? Honourable Rider.
Everything will be fixed. If only it could be like that. If only it could be like that. And I think that realistically, we, as much as we would like to wave a wand and fix all of our problems overnight, many of these things take lots of time to achieve.
Yeah.
But I do really hope that we can turn around after the 5 years that we've been in office with a sense of pride and say these are the things that we've achieved. Now, it's so much easier if you're in a municipality, in the executive, or if you're sitting as a minister in the executive and you can point to a new building that's gone up or a water tower or something like that that you've actually built and made yourself. For members of parliament, normally the impact that we have is less obvious sometimes, but improved lives of South Africans and a better direction that the country is moving in, where the real concerns of the people have been taken seriously by Parliament, have been communicated to the relevant ministers, to the relevant provinces, and that there have been positive changes emanating out of that. And again, I think that the legislative impact, often, you know, we don't see all of the different impacts that the legislation is going to have. And a law that's written with an experience in Gauteng in the Western Cape, like many of our officials have, doesn't always work in places like Mpumalanga or the Eastern Cape. So therefore, we need to make sure that the people in Lusikisiki are also having the same experience, the same lived experience of a positive impact of a law happening on them as the people that are living in Sandton.
And Honourable Falik, will everything be fixed, hopefully?
Well, the importance is for this Parliament to sharpen its work on issues of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Then people want safer communities also where they want to live in. And if Parliament can sharpen its oversight over the executive in those specific areas and ensure that the interventions that are envisaged is actually implemented and have a positive outcome, we must be very careful in South Africa that we safeguard democracy, because that underpins future development and prosperity. And we must guard against people losing hope in democracy, because then a democratic deficit will come in. So we have a responsibility, whilst we're overseeing the executive, to ensure that people maintain their trust and faith in the democratic process, where people want to go out to go and vote because they see visible change in their communities. And that is ultimately where we must be assessed, the participation of ordinary citizens throughout the value chain, from local government right up to national government, in democratic processes, not only during election time, but also between elections.
And final comments, Honourable Rider, to ordinary South Africans that have been listening in, that have been watching. What do you have to say to them?
So, first of all, thank you very much for listening, for taking the time to find out a little bit more about us, because the work that we do is essentially for the listeners and the viewers. So we do appreciate the time and the interest. I do think that we are who we are because of who you are. We are here to do the work of yourselves. We represent you. We're elected to represent the people of South Africa. You need to communicate with us, make sure that we know what you want, and then also, if we're not doing things according to what you want, let us know. Communicate with us. We have constituency offices, we have email addresses and telephone numbers. Get in contact with your MPs and make sure that you're communicating with us and that we are genuinely working for you.
Honourable Falik?
it's important that we realize the vision of the founding fathers of our democracy in ensuring government by the people, for the people. And that is what we must constantly work towards. So we will not be able to put back anything of value back into society by doing the work that we're doing if we do not have active citizen participation. Citizens must keep us accountable. They must keep us on our toes. They must keep the executive on their toes. But to do so, they must participate. And an active citizenry is fundamental to ensuring active community participation.
House Chairs, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Tsepo.
You're welcome.
And that was Mr. Cedric Frolick and Mr. Dennis Ryder, the House Chairpersons of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces, respectively. Now, we have come to the end of another exciting show. And of course, Parliament continues to fulfill its constitutional responsibilities. And to stay informed about Parliament's engagements, follow, like, and subscribe on all social media platforms at Parliament of RSA. After all, it is your Parliament, your voice, your future. And a special thank you to everybody who has been listening and watching, and those who participated and asked their questions and made some comments for the guests that we had today. Thank you so much for being here with us. Take care.
This book, our Constitution, protects our society and empowers us to govern. The Protea leaves are us, the people, who freely elect our voices in Parliament. The drum calls the people of Parliament, through whom we govern together. And the sun is our country, healing our past, improving our lives, and energizing our potential. Together, our Constitution, our people, our Parliament, and our country are building our great South African nation. Parliament TV, Channel 408 on DSTV.